Welcome to everyone. Petros has promised us an intriguing exploration of the enigmatic Gordian knot. And let's see how this inspires our practice in psychoanalysis. Petro, the floor is yours.
You got me stressed now with this promise. Okay.
You're going to give us something, I'm sure. So.
Yeah. Good evening to everybody. I'm continuing the elaboration of the concept of the Gordian knot, which is a knot unlike any other introduced by Lacan, because it's a knot that it was cut. Okay, so Alexander the Great, I repeat again, he was trying to solve it, and the main legend says that he cut it, but there is another legend that he removed a screw in the middle holding the knot, and then everything was untied. But even the removal of the screw was a cut of the structure of the knot. I would say things that might seem not very directly to the knot, but they are all parts of this series that I will do for a few months. I will not keep you very long, but I have the impression that the things that I will say are quite important and maybe thought-provoking. I was listening to some seminars by other analysts lately. Some of them were from the London School, and they were nice, organized nicely. Very nice analysts. They spoke and in the best of their knowledge, of course. There was something annoying in the seminar, because this guy who was speaking in the beginning, maybe he should go to a radio station and working. He was gaily excited. So I wouldn't go to him for analysis, but the way he organized the seminars, he has my appreciation for that, but I wouldn't go to him for analysis. I'm not going to mention his name, but if you see the seminars, he's a guy who opens the seminars all the time. Maybe I say his seminar in the process, I will see. There's no need now, but if it comes to me, I would say. Okay, let's start with this. The university discourse always functions as a camouflage for the master. Sometimes we use the word serving the master, but it's not serving the master. It's camouflaging the master. It's itself a master camouflage. Okay? The master that it camouflages is not a person, but an ideal. A set of ideas, a policies, or whatever. And because it is function as a camouflage, thus, therefore, if it is producing psychotherapies or psychoanalysis under that discourse, they are themselves camouflages as well. Because this production can only produce itself. They camouflage, these camouflages, they camouflage subjective truth, and therefore their representatives are clones of the spirit of mastery which they serve. As a consequence, I would say the truth and the possible act, and you remember I said the truth and the act are one, the truth and the possible act with which the subject shall deal with life and death becomes, for this discourse, the fear of the Jews. Probably you know the expressions. The expression from the gospel, the fear of the Jews. I will explain. In Greek is the atophobon των Ιουδαίων. There's nothing against the Jews here, but it's a metaphor that I will explain. So let's continue to how does it camouflage? Lacan tells us that this happens through imaginary identifications. These imaginary identifications are necessary to be empowered, and this is how these discourses, psychology, psychotherapy, let's say cure. When this discourse itself, they are necessary to empower this imaginary identification, when this discourse itself undermines any possible and any possibility of a subjective truth. And when I speak about truth, I don't mean it in the same that Miller and Lacan say it. I mean a truth that it is an act. You are not a viewer of that truth. Our school leads to a truth that it becomes part of your body and you become the act. You are the cause of desire. The psychoanalysis is the cause of desire, not the object causing desire. Your act in life is the cause of desire. Okay, so it is not that there is nothing there in what it camouflages. A lot of Lacanians said it has nothing there. Okay? There is something there, indeed, even in the structures of schizophrenia. As I was saying, can you mute everybody? Yugoslava, mute Yugoslava.
I'm here, but I'm mute. Wait.
Yeah. Because I can see you instead of. Marina, can you see me or Yugoslava?
You.
Okay. Only me. As I was saying, these imaginary identifications they are necessary to be empowered when this discourse itself undermines any possibility of a subjective truth. It is not that there is nothing. There is indeed even in the structure of schizophrenia. As I was saying, it is not that there is nothing there, but that this operation makes sure that the act and the truth are buried. And thus the return of the repressed is handled as a pimple on your face, spiri, to be removed by the surface of the identification. The fear of the Jews that I mentioned earlier, this expression from the Gospels, is anastasis. It's a resurrection, it's anastasis. Not so much, the proof of anastasis is not so much the empty tomb and the narrative that this empty tomb, the kenotafio that I mentioned in quite a few of my seminars, not so much the empty tomb and the kenotafio and the narrative it will initiate, but a living body and the acts it will generate in the world. It's not the emptiness of the tomb, but precisely the presence of what was in the tomb in the world. And that can shift quite a few things in our thinking. And especially how we understand desire in the body. Lacan said that the Unary Trait is the mark of death. I will say more in my next seminar about it. I will devote a whole seminar about it. Okay, I think it was in seminar 17 or 18. He says the unary trait is a mark of death. I think he was linking that in the death drive. So who dies there? Or what dies? What certainly dies is the Freudian to work and love, but even what I made out of it, to work with love, which is the identification with one's act, where the body has a different experience of the world and we experience our body differently. It is the ascesis that dies. The castrated master cannot be castrated with knowledge, as Lacan said in one of his seminars, I think it's 17 or 18, I don't remember. It's one of these two seminars, I think especially I don't remember, it's one of those that you could see something shifting from the clinical structures to the knots. He's referring to something else, to this going towards the mystical. So the castrated master cannot be castrated with knowledge, but with gnosis. It is the gnosis of the individual gnosis revealing that there has never been a master, but the subject's willingness to be defamed of the vastness, vitality of life in order to receive a name. In the name of love. It is a name in the name of love. Of a sort of love which is the master itself, because it is named by the master. There are a few ways for the object A that we can speak about it. For example, how do we understand the object A in the clinic? What are its metamorphoses? We speak of the Unary Trait. How does it appear in the sessions? What does it do towards the analyst? What is its function in the sessions? So there are a few ways for the object A. If the body appears in the place of the object's semblance, the object A semblance, which is a signifier, to construct jouissance, to assist in the construction of jouissance, to support jouissance. Okay, if the body, a part of the body actually, I will repeat that, appears in the place of the sub-object's A semblance, a signifier, which is a signifier, to construct jouissance, then you've got perversion. This is a mechanism of privation. And this is very precise what I'm saying. That's why they can get this extraordinary enjoyment with parts of their body. And that's why they detect something like a fetish on the other. They make the fetish part of the other bodies. If the body appears to represent the object A, let's say the eye for the gaze, appears, but it is not privated as in perversion, then you've got psychotic structure. Okay, the object privated or assuming the body is one of the reasons for the confusion regarding diagnosis and diagnosing of many men as hysterics. When the object in question is privated, then it supports jouissance. it generates jouissance, and it takes the place of an absolute truth. That's why you cannot convince a perversive person, especially a sexual pervert, otherwise, because a specific part of the body is privated as an object A, and he can use that to support his jouissance. It's part of his discourse. Okay, this is not happening in neurosis, especially in hysteria, where the body speaks when the hysterics desire, and I will refer to Penny in a recent chat we had, when desire cannot be expressed. Okay, the body there speaks of a repressed, the return of the repressed there returns as a symptom. In perversion, the return of the repressed does not haunt the pervert subject, but it creates a sort of fantasy where that body, which is part of the discourse, is privated, will be used, and it will make use of the other as an object to support that enjoyment. The body is part of the discourse, and it does not come to speak of the discourse. It doesn't need deciphering in perversion. I will say a few more things for the graph of desire. I said I will give you every time a few things. I will add another thing today in it. Of course, we've got the aggressivity. We test desire. And here I will bring a contradiction that Lacan says. We don't touch what he says. I think he was about the Lathus. We don't provoke the Lathus a lot, he says. The Lathus it's there, it's the discourse of science, in the structure of the analysand. But this is in contradiction with what he says. Let's test desire of the analysand from the first session, which I agree with that. Okay, we test it. Let's test it. So we've got the aggressivity part. When the aggressivity part is, what is it? You refuse to be the place of the object A, even though they say you should assume the object A to cause desire to the analysand. But this is for me a therapeutic or an imaginary desire. You shouldn't, if they want to be, if we are orienting towards the act and a truth that means act, then we shouldn't veil or identify with the object A. Okay, we should challenge the structure and whatever desire they have there, because it's not desire, it's this Latanusa, which I separate from Lacan's Lathus. Okay, and then if they accept it, they are going to construct something new, even if it is in the process they reconstruct with the Sinthome something within their fantasy. But this is our aim. Okay, and this analysis is proper. And this is the way to depathologize, as they started recently. And I'm proud of the school because we have been doing this depathologization at least for 5 years now. And now in the schools following Miller, they started speaking about depathologizing the discourse. I am so pleased that they follow us. Somebody has been listening to what we are saying. Okay, it was about time. So the second part, when you test desire, and if you test desire with ways I said in other presentations, then the structure, the symptom with which they approach the world and with which they want to put the analyst in that context fails, at least temporarily. And then what will come at force and at there in the sessions, the second stage is the unary trait. The unary trait appears in the sessions. That's the moment where it appears. I know there are many explanations for the unary trait. Lacan itself gives quite a few, but the main one he gives is that it is a very powerful signifier. He says it's a signifier. Okay, it might appear in the form of the signifier, but it's a special signifier for me, in my interpretation. The unary trait is that which it is utilized after the part of aggressivity, that we don't accept the fantasy of the analysand. The unary trait appears, and his job is not to write. It doesn't write. His job is to remove. Να χαράξει. I don't know how to say in English, Penny, but it χαράζει. It scratches something off. It's a signifier without a signified, but its job is to remove something from the other. And because if the other accepts its removal, then a chain of signifiers, of master signifiers, are coming to place that being into the fantasy of the analyst. So when the unary trait appears, it's, in my opinion, its purpose is to scrap. Okay, is to scrap, is to remove the dust before the writing. It removes something. I will tell you in a bit what is removing, especially in the relationship with the child. Okay, so his job is to χαράξει, but in the sense to create an opening on the other, on the analyst in this case. This is a kerkoporta. Kerkoporta is a Greek word. It's the small door from which the Ottomans entered and broke into Constantinople. Okay, it was a door that was found open by the Turks and took over the Constantinople. It's not a signifier or a letter in the proper sense, and not a mechanism. It is a signifier that its job is to remove, so it does not have a signifier. It is not a mark because it is that which creates space for the marking. It is that which creates space. We have to remove something. And you can see it in the session in the second stage. I'm rewriting now the graph of desire in my own way. The first stage is aggressivity. It fails. The real is approaching. So the next thing the analyst does brings up this unary trait again to scrap something from the analyst so it can enter their fantasy. If that fails and they continue the session, then you've got possibilities for desire. Okay, so and it does so by removing. It creates space for the mark, and it does so by removing something from the other. What is removed from the child when the unary trait appears from the side of the mother? The first connection is rhythm. It's a bodily rhythm. It's a stress of the mother, it's a heartbeat, it's a breath. This is how you can even interpret that as language, but it's a different sort of language. Maybe it's a language with you. The child connects with the mother, but with this bodily rhythm. I'm not saying it's the best, and I'm not saying that it's better than the signifier, but it's something that there is a connection. So it is removed from that in order to enter. This is what is removed, this rhythm, this ability to have not this precise rhythm, but the ability to have access to rhythm, to the harmony of the rhythm. The harmony of rhythm that desire and the act will bring forth later. Okay, it is removed, and sometimes it kicks, but it's not something that is solid and ready. It needs to be created later with the act. So that one is removed. So a new sort of choreography is introduced by the removal of that through the unary trait, and then the chain of signification that pre-exists the child. Okay? Okay. What is removed? It is the rhythm established with the other's body, which will be assessed later. Not this one rhythm. But it will be reunited later when it is released from the signifier, because the letter as movement is trapped in the signifier, and will be released later and will be connected with the perpendicular motions of the act. The movement of what is removed is trapped in the signifier as letter. Lacan says that what he saw when he was returning from Spain, he spoke about the plains, but he spoke that water. He mentioned about water, the movement of water. That's why I mentioned the perpendicular, because it reminded me of Heraclitus, that nobody can step in the same river twice. Even if you find the same spot, the water will not be the same. So there is something with the constant incalculable, in the constant surprise, and it is in the dimension of the miracle. So the unary trait appears from the primary repression to facilitate the analysis in the context, seeing it has appeared as a xenos soma, as a foreign body in the discourse of the analysand, especially in the initial sessions. The analyst is this foreign body, the carrier, as long as he is a carrier of the alien, which Angelos and myself, we have elaborated quite a few times. What is alien? What is alien? What is totally foreign, even from the mirror stage, or even from what is lacking from the mirror stage? It doesn't exist. There is nothing there. It's the alien. It's your desire that you will construct. That's the absolute alien there. So the analyst is this foreign body, the carrier of the alien, as far, as long as he is the at least one desiring, and not the subject supposed to know. If you are a subject supposed to know, then you are working with the logic of the fantasy. Okay? And even though there would be a good analysis, it cannot go beyond the Sinthome. You cannot go beyond the father who names. So, the at least one desiring, the analyst, it will appear as such as the alien. Okay? And when it appears as the alien, then the subject in analysis, they have two options, only two options. One is to consider the analyst as a persecutory object because it is foreign, and that's an indication that they do not let go of whatever jusas is there, and they are not capable of analysis, unless you are going to puppet them with Pampers and a soother, which I'm not in a position to do that. Either you will bring forth your desire, because I don't have time to do this shit to protect your ego, to take you step by step and stuff. Either you have it or not. Okay, the first interventions are enough to clarify this thing. So, the at least one desiring, it appears as such when she or he hold the place of the primal father, the at least one who desires. Okay, that's the primal father for me, the at least one who desires, not the one who has all women. It's the one who has access to his own desire, but not a desire that he operates in the sessions as the analyst desire. It's a desire that it's a compass in living life. Because the body of desire, the body of the act, you have to use it, and you should be able to use it in the way you live your life. If we don't do that, then psychoanalysis is useless. The analyst making a parousia as an object of desire instead of an object causing desire. You are not the object A, you are an act causing desire, your whole being. You are causing desire because you have a dedication to life. You don't have to do anything different in the sessions. I don't know if I told you the story with Mao Zedong, but Kissinger says that when Mao Zedong came in the room, without even speaking or saying a few words, he was filling the room, but everybody wanted to listen to someone from him. Okay? So your own presence exudes, it shines desire. And to do so, you have to go beyond the limitations of your structures and the body. You have to experience your body as rhythm, rhythm in space. All of the above are parts of the act. Not the practice, but the ascesis of psychoanalysis or the ascesis of the act. What Marino Magliali named the clinic of the act. What Harulla named the act of our school. By the way, at this point, I want to mention that my best friend and colleague Angelos Chalidis, he published an amazing book about psychoanalysis. And if you are going to read only one book about Lacanian, proper Lacanian psychoanalysis, not in the way I speak, but in proper Lacanian psychoanalysis, read that one. It's a book that you can read it even if you don't have a lot of experience with Lacanian psychoanalysis. But also for those who are practitioners who are involved in psychoanalysis, it's a must. And I believe it would be one of the most important books in relation to the, I would call the classical Lacanian way. And sometimes with Penny we speak, and I say that the proper Lacanian that I know, it's Angelos. So, have a look at his book. At every cut, the movement changes slowly and slowly. Not like the graph of desire, but like what is happening to the knot. I will show you another seminar, but when you think of the Borromean knot, we think that it goes like this. Yeah, what we're doing basically, we're removed from the linearity of the signifier, just bring the Borromean knot in your mind. It goes like this from the inside to the outside. Okay? So the Mobius strip. But if you think of the Mobius strip differently, in the way I think about it, think of it built in small particles. And these particles, they don't move from right to left or from left to right, but they are moving like this. Okay, they create a pulse, a breath, a lung. I will show you next time a video that I found that exemplifies what I said. There is no movement from right to left, there is no linearity. Okay, because the act is incalculable, and every time there is an act, there is a reform and anastasis of the subject. This is a price that the analyst, it's not actually a price, but it's his or her access to the apeiron, to the infinite, without getting lost, and they have to go beyond even the Mobius strip has linearity, but it has movement. So if you go beyond this, you go to this up and down, inside and outside, and these dots operating. I will bring a moving shape next time. It means that the experience of your body will be different, will go beyond your symptom. The time that you will experiencing this after years of analysis, a lot of your old signifiers marking your body, they will be intensified because you're about to make a choice, either to leave that body or to hold it and create a logic on it. There is no wrong and no bad for it, but it will indicate the way you will practice. At the level of the act, the nirvana principle achieved by Francis of Assisi, the movement becomes mostly like this movement I have described to you. I will bring you, as I said, Lacan's response to civilization as discontents was a decent one, but not the best. It was the 4 discourses. My response to that text, it was a breath. It was the ergon and the monad, because I connected St. Francis of Assisi with the proper dimension of love, and St. Teresa with their divine orgasm, with the divine drive. It's not a formulation, that these formulas that you can see in civilization, but it is something there in that book that is more important than anything, and it is the dimension of love. We still have a lot to learn from saints, because they are more miraculous than psychoanalysts. The psychoanalytic miracle in most schools is a pessimistic one, because it puts you as a viewer to look the logic and understand what is behind it. They speak about the removing, Lacan in seminars 17 or 18 speaks about from myth to the structure. Actually, it's a structuring of the myth that you will create to be enacted, to which you will dedicate your no-body. Okay, we're dealing with the structure in the sessions, but the construction is a myth of the act. It's not actually a myth, but it's closer to something that it's closer to the legend. It's something to be written, not to be read. The signifier is an S1 only because of the change of signifiers and the change noting. The absolute identification with the act is the analyst as an object causing desire. That object, harassi. What is in English harassi? Angele or Penny, if somebody knows. Scraps.
It sounds like a kind of carving.
Carving, okay, yes. It's not writing, but it's carving. So I spoke about the Unary Trait carving, but to remove, and I spoke here about the act of the analyst. Okay. The absolute identification with the act is the analyst as an object causing desire. It's an object of desire because he has access to the breath. That object, harassi, carving, like the Unary Trait, not to introduce okay, it's I have the video here, but let me see if I can forward it to you. Mira just send it to me. Mira, can you send it in the chat of the Zoom? Guys, were you listening to me? Mira? Send the same video that you said in the chat here, and everybody can see what I was meaning with how this new Mobius strip functions. Thank you, Spiro, for your card, a hand material, blah, blah, blah. People can read it there. So, the absolute identification with the act is the analyst as an object of desire, not causing desire, an object of desire. You are the breath. You are identifying with your own breath. That's the das Ding. That's the Nirvana principle. Freud didn't speak a lot about the Nirvana principle, and he cited it in the level of psychosis because, as Richard Klein told me, he didn't have access to the object breath in the way that you said it, not even as an object A. That object scraps Harassi like the Unary Trait, not to introduce, but to create ex nihilo in the plurality and pandodynamia, omnipotence, of the signifiers. This ex nihilo is not the part not taken by the discourse of the other, which Lacan mentioned in his Eccrits, that becomes desire later, which some refer to as the source of the drive, but the kinesis introducing the knot, which dissolves the connection, which makes signifiers what they are. The Sinthome does not offer that. It gives you freedom with the same other and a knot. It's on the side of coping, if I may create Penny. No, this is what Penny said is very important. You are on the side of coping and not creation. Okay? You can create within the same fantasy, but that's not your own creation. The Unary Trait also appears in the way the analysand chooses the analyst. Okay? I wrote a few notes here. Neurosis, there is polysemia or Sinthome. Psychosis is the Sinthome. The act, it can be in all structure, provided they find the no body. Perversion, he's calling you to be the object by which he enjoys consciously, and you have to pay the price. In psychosis, there is a call to complete their body to the analyst. Neurosis, and call to complete the fantasy. Miller, Jacques-Alain Miller, in his Genius, of course, and we will try to decompose him in the same way he tried to decompose Lacan and Freud, in the same way Lacan decomposed Freud. Miller cannot say much about topology. Soler's even worse. And they can even say less about the resurrected body of Christ because they fail to go beyond their bodies. That's their blind spots. They cannot go beyond their bodies, and that's why they are very little involved in the topology. Okay? The other side of psychoanalysis, Lacan says that in the other side of psychoanalysis, you cannot, he says that you cannot escape the other. And yet, he speaks about Saint Teresa. I'm trying to show you a contradiction in Lacan. He mentioned a jouissance not of the other, but it's precisely a jouissance escaping the other of language. So there is a contradiction in what he's saying. Okay. This is not the la langue. This is not of the la langue, but of the language with you that I write, the pronoitou logo, of the breath. What I will call today the divine, that's for Harula, the divine tongue. In the first, I think it's in the first page of Joyce and the Sinthome, you would be surprised how many times he speaks about la langue, language, discourse, and tongue. And I was wondering why he brings the tongue. Tongue, it's a word. Of course, you know that he was training in Jesuit school. The word tongue is what is used in the religious text. The tongue is something connected with God. Even in the Tower of Babel, they were speaking different tongues, he says, but in other ways, there was a tongue. The organ of the tongue takes there a different signification. It's something that is beyond the organ, but it's a way of communicating with the divine drive. The divine tongue is a divine drive. Okay. That's the language. Then breath is that which communicates with the God who cannot act. You are the actor of God. You are the savior of God, as Kazantzakis would say. This is not to make psychoanalysis metaphysical or religious, as Jung did, at least on a certain extent, but to refer, I want to refer you to both Freud and Lacan, that they use two saints, I use, two sacred people, Saint Francis of Assisi and Saint Teresa, in order to show the exception to their own rules. Why they did not find other examples? One cannot withdraw with one's body from the big other. The big other is not reduced as long as you have a body. This is from Miller in Lacanian biology. He says one cannot withdraw with one's body from the big other. And my addition to that is the big other is not reduced. You cannot withdraw from him as long as you have a body. Saint Teresa and Saint Francis, they were separated from their body, the body provided by the fantasy. So this is my response to the blind spot of Miller. In anxiety, bear with me, I'm finishing. In anxiety, the object is ektoto, a fallen object. This means it has fallen from its value. And how is that happening? It is happening by having the signifier by which it is covered. And I say covered because the drive surpasses that signifier as it was invisible. So to go and get the signifier representing the phallus, it has an elliptical move around the object A. What is important in the drive, they say, I will say something different today. It's not to avoid the object A, because that is veiled, but the aim of the drive is to go towards the phallus. Okay? It goes, here's the object A, so, but it goes elliptical like this, because there is a phallus. Okay? If you go to the object A, okay, if you go and you can able to remove it and have this emptiness where it leads to the different knot that I spoke other times, this threshold to the infinite, you encounter your object of the object of the das Ding, which is, it's not a forbidden object, it is quite the opposite. It is a breath. And breath that, not the initial act of breathing, but a breath that it was constructed according to this. You have to go through the signification process and Sinthome to reach that. So the das Ding is that which is forbidden, so you get the phallus. The drive aims at the phallus, is not avoiding the object A, it aims at the phallus, at what represents the phallus. So it's invisible because that threshold is invisible because there is a signifier there that you have to avoid. It is in this way that the drive constantly operates and moves, that it seeks to represent the subject according to the ideas formed by the fantasy. The phallus is needed for that, one signifier representing the subject for another signifier. Thus, if the object is lost, then it means that the valuable signifier veiling, it has either made the object A an appearing on the level of the organism or in the force of persecution. What I say with this is you have still ideal. The ideal is what you hunt, then if the threshold appears, the object A, that which it's actually what the object das Ding, the object, your true object of desire will appear as persecutory, as it happens in the nightmare, because you haven't been able to be removed from the fantasy and create something new, a body that is new. And this to happen tells us that the faith of the subject, it is still devoted to the Oedipal ideas through which he or she were receiving love, in quotes, love. Or it reveals the door, on the other hand, the threshold, provided one wills to go beyond their body. Okay? The father of castration is a father of jouissance, and I put him in opposition to the father of desire, the at least one who desire. Lacan is speaking about the father of castration and the father of jouissance. I think it's seminar 17 or 18, I'm not sure. But if you want me to find it out, I can find my notes somewhere. The first interventions in the knowledge of inscriptions of luck, the ladder. Okay. I will speak about the myth and structure and myth and act. One copes, and it requires from myth to structure that you keep repeating the truth with your life so that the myth exists. This is a coping. Okay, it's a truth based on coping and keeping the fantasy alive. Okay, what to say more? There's a few more ideas I have. So, coping requires you that you keep repeating the truth, the latus, the lanthanusa that I say, because Lacan referred to the latus to the university and the scientific discourse, mostly, the capitalist discourse. So that you keep repeating the truth with your life so that the myth exists. The second, ask you, the parousia, what I'm saying, the beyond the body. The second asks you to give it a body. Singular by singular moments, because they create step by step a myth to be enacted. It's not a myth that you are viewers. You are writing this myth. And you are not just writing it, you are writing it with your own body. With this no body, you are writing it. That's why you are becoming a cause of desire. I will speak about the father who names, and I'm referring there to the Joyce and the Sinthome. Of course, I will do a very thorough analysis of this. The father who names, it is not a stage to reach if we are orienting psychoanalysis to the act, but the transition. As Penny said once, he is lost after the naming. He names and he lost. He's naming that which, not the subject, but he's naming that which to be dropped. And this is where the phallus appears, by the way, in psychosis. He's naming that to be dropped, the body. So this is the father who names before his death, before his honorable funeral. It shows a prerequisite of the act which is beyond naming. Naming names the noun. You are a noun, you are a name. You need to become a verb, a nameless verb. A verb is that which does not have a name. In the Sinthome, there is interplay of the words language and tongue, as I said earlier. The tongue is divine. It is the pnoitulou, the language with you, and the support of the divine drive, which Harula Pilavagi is devoting a chapter in her new book that will be published probably in a few months. I'm looking forward to read what she has to say. The object A, this is from Lacan also, this is a quote from Lacan, removes, listen to this, listen to what, this is very important to the concepts of the breath. The object A removes the asphyxiation of jouissance and of the unary trait. I don't have to say anything about it. I kept this at this point because it exactly explains what I was saying earlier. It removes the asphyxiation of the jouissance and of the unary trait. Pay attention to the word he used, asphyxiation. So when you remove the asphyxiation, you've got the breath. From the names to the names. Let me see. No, I don't have much. Give me 5 minutes and we're done. From the names to the names. From one God to the name. To discover the truth implies that if we want to discover the truth, as Lacan says, that's a question for you. Please write it down. The discovery of the truth. What does this imply on the graph of desire? The graph of desire is a practical thing. It tells you what is happening in the sessions. So if the aim is intentionality, but our aim is to make cuts, domes, in the intentionality, if we are aiming at the discovery of truth, what does it explain? What does it imply in the way we practice on the graph of desire and our understanding of the graph of desire? I would say one of the things that the graph should explain how we go from myth to the structure, as Lacan said in Seminar 17. And that as well implies something else, I say, that from being dressed in the mythical cloak, one now become a spectator of structures, a masturbator. We are just viewers. We are not actors. Actors on the sense of the act. And we just are able to see the functions and the pessimism because we function on seeing what is behind. Okay? If to discover the truth that Lacan says, what does it imply on the graph of desire? What does it imply on the structure? And what does it imply on the formation of analyst? It implies an analyst who is a viewer, not one who operates as an act in life and has a desire for everything instead of a desire to utilize as a tool in the sessions. An orientation on the treatment away from adding to act and act to the truth, as I say, creates the jouissance of the peeping Tom. It's an expression, we don't have lepsia, because we're just there looking, we're outsiders. How can you be present? Not by entering the analysis as discourse, but if you have a body present in the sessions, of course, intervene to the discourse of the analysand, but that body, that being, that identification with the act has its own act, identified with its own act in life. It exudes a different sort of desire. We don't even have to try to be different and create this absolute difference. Because nobody can imitate our act. Our act is inspiring. We are the objects of desire. So, an orientation of the treatment away from adding an act to the truth creates a jouissance of the peeping Tom. How can you think, that's a question for you, of the graph and the procedure towards anastasis, the resurrection, if the act is what directs psychoanalysis and not just the discovery of the truth? In another seminar, I said, what if the purpose of science was not the discovery of the truth, but the facilitization of the act, facilitating the act? The ergon, one of my introductions to psychoanalysis, kills the phantoms of the father who names. The ergon, if you reach a stage, you become the act, identify with the act and the breath, kills the phantasm of the father who names. The tomb is necessary for the resurrection, not of the father, but of the subject. The father, who is a desire and being, who is dedicated and identified with their act, does not need a father, because the function of orientation is given by the act. So the dead father has a proper place. He doesn't function as a rule, as a law, as a totem, or as a taboo. We recognize its honorable grave, but desire, in my opinion, is the desire and the identification with the act is the real father. That's the real father. You are the real father. What is a real father? One who inspires. Not one who's becoming the object causing desire within a specific fantasy for the sake of it at the end, to understand that the fantasy is just a fantasy and the analysis is an object A. This sort of bullshit pessimism, I don't want it in the way I practice. In this moment, I will tell you that Heraclitus, my favorite philosopher, he went and he died on a pile of dung, of shit, to show that the human body, I tell that in the seminar, was useless. Okay? We don't want to reach that pessimism, because the human body, I would use something from the Orthodox tradition, it's the house of your desire. You are not just housing it, your desire is a commander. You are commanding your body. You are not naming your body. You don't need a name, because the verb is nameless. Okay? and 2 minutes and we're finished. Let's try to put our shadow back to the body. The shadow is a breath. The father who names is not the subject, even though you can see that when the phallus is established in schizophrenia, they are able to name themselves and the other differently. That's some of the Sinthome you can see it in psychosis. But there is something beyond that. The father who names is not writing, but he is on the side of reading. He names in order to read the subject. Reading is not the same as writing. Writing is infinite. You don't write to be read, you write to continue writing. That's the choice, the price of the analyst is to choose his own death. It's psychoanalysis. I think, I don't remember the Spanish, or what I would use the or in English, muerte. I saw that in Cuba, was socialism or death. And I would say it's the act or death. The naming from the father who names creates, and thank you, Angela, who brought that in my attention. The naming creates something else to be read. The father who names creates something else to be read. That's why even if he names and writes, he stops and he creates something else to be read. It's an operation within the same fantasy. He does not create a new word. He cannot create a cosmogony. Writing, the writing proper is a signature. Not even the letter is there. You cannot read the letter, because if you can read the letter, it means that it is trapping the signifier. The letter, it's a signature, it's movement. Lacan says that the planes exist. Οι παιδιάδες, the planes that he saw from above, they get their value because of the running water. I will say something last, but I will mention it in detail. There was this Eve dream that Lacan mentioned. He says that he was perversive because he was getting enjoyment from the. It's a case that from a different sort of analysis. He says that it was perversion. I would totally disagree with him. I think it's a case of schizophrenia. I will speak about, my next seminar will be about that dream. And with this, I will stop my seminar and accept 10 to 15 minutes maximum. 10 minutes question, because we already passed the hour. Sorry, it was a lot of material and I feel I have to say it. So let's start with the questions. Marina, you can take over and.
Petro?
Yeah.
Just before you start questions, you wanted to share that video. I cannot upload it on the Zoom, but what you can do, you can take your phone and put it on your camera so everyone can see it.
Okay. Let me try to find this fucking. Which one? The first? Yeah, I found. Okay. Something like that, guys. Look at how the Moebius here, kind of Moebius moves. You see, it makes sort of movements, but the inside comes outside. Did you understand what I'm talking about? The particles are in the same place. How the fuck is?
That's an important visualization to help us to imagine, because so much of what happens now in the education and the formation of human beings is on flat surfaces.
Yes.
And the thing is, we're dealing with manifolds. Even the Borromean knot, it's a closer representation to see it as a manifold rather than, and what you showed there was was precisely that kind of spatial. It's a better spatial representation, because obviously how things are really structured is beyond our current scope of imagination, but it's workable provided we leave it open. In other words, we don't flatten, we don't insist that it remain flat. Things begin to be simple and bring our imaginative capabilities to life if we include the I don't know. If we write in the limits of current knowledge, and this relates to everything we were talking about in terms of the body, and the body, what's key really is about the identity of the radical identity of the being of desire that each one is, and how I would read your reference to being an object A, the object of desire. It's actually, the object is desire itself.
The object of desire is not the object A. It's the object of desire is not the incest, but...
No, it's not the object of desire, but the being of desire itself. What is inspired
yes
is when somebody is in the presence of a desiring being.
The parousia.
Yes, that's right. It's desire itself. It's not a it's not a little thing, it's not a thing that you can point to. It's a presence that you resonate with. And this is where, I find it interesting and useful to, to think in terms of locality and non-locality in physics. So I think, scientists, both mainstream and the ones who are pushing for transformations, are grappling with these matters of the oneness. Even Lacan, I don't remember in which seminar, but it's the one, I think, il y a de l'un. There is something of the one. And the one is always taken up as a one like this, in other words, a little thing, but it's not that. It's the way in which things are not separate. But the point is how to extract oneself and from the other, which is not a subtraction from the other. It's an extraction of oneself to be able to read the signal from the noise. And each one of us has to do that. Otherwise, we're drowning in the other and the signifiers of the other. And the other thing that you mentioned about the drive aiming towards the phallus is characteristically the desire of the other. And the subject precisely has to extract themselves, disentangle themselves from the desire of the other, the conditions of the desire of the other, and assume their own being as desire.
Yeah.
And with that, it implies the creation of a new body, which is synchronic, not the body of the history, which is encoded in all the entanglements. So precisely one has to sever oneself from one's ancestral bonds.
Yes.
Otherwise, one is defined by the discourse of the other. And we're usually oscillating between those moments of extraction and re-entanglement, but that's the know-how of the subject. You said a lot there, and I'm sure, we're going to be learning from this, for many years to come. So that's my response. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. Marina, can you allow me to share? Because Mira sent me a good video of that before I receive any comments or questions. Allow me to share the screen. Is it possible? No, it's fine.
Pedro Virginia put it in the chat and I've downloaded it, so we do have
Okay, that's
thank you, Virginia.
Mira, you can put it on the chat also, the one you find. Okay, let's go to a different question. Who wants to ask something else? Harula?
Hello, Petro.
Hello.
Thank you for the time. I would like to ask something about the myth you said. You spoke about from myth to structure. You said something about coping and keeping the fantasy alive.
Yeah.
And I would like to ask, why do we need this myth?
The myth is the Oedipal myth because we were, if it wasn't for that myth, we will not be able to connect, as Eric Laurent said, as boys and girls. Okay, it's a myth that interprets the world, but it gives us a place in the world. And in psychoanalysis, according to different other schools, you go from myth to structure. In the way I teach psychoanalysis, you go from myth to the creation. You are removed from myth, you go through a structure, but you create a myth to be enacted. Okay, because if you are an act, you are going. Put your Miriana. Put your option, please. Mute. So it's a myth to be enacted. Desire is a myth to be enacted.
Well, in this case, we continue calling it then a myth.
I like to call it a legend, and it's I like to connect it with the Greek word themi, in the ancient Greek sense that they devoted their life, and that was their kleronomia, their inheritance to the world and the culture, what their act would leave behind, how they will be spoken of. Okay, it wasn't about a name, but how they created the name. That's what was spoken. So who you are, it wasn't a name, but you received a name because of your act. So the whole act became a name.
Okay, that's nice. Thank you.
Angele? Non comparo.
Yeah.
Question?
Not a question, but the last thing you referred to about the fame, the way they acquired this fame was through the act. It reminds me a lot of this function of the real father, not the father who names that you distinguished from it, but there is a possibility of acquiring a name, although the name is irrelevant.
Yes, it's the verb who is important there. In ancient Greece, it wasn't the name, but the way you achieved your name. The verbs were important. If you are going to the imaginary, like the United States, constant, and the way they do this therapies and stuff, they constantly try to bring forth different identifications, and this is where the name is important, but not the verb. The subject who is constantly named. In order to go to the verb and go beyond the Sinthome and go beyond the body to go to the no-body, the subject has to become a verb. And that's the most difficult part in one's analysis. The most difficult part, because the symptoms, any symptoms that they have, they escalate and they become so hard, so powerful on him or her, that they have to make a choice, either to stay within the structure, symptomatize, or in the way I can name and fix it and make it more gentle, or to be removed from that. That's the moment that one is called to proceed to language with you from language, which means speech and parole. From the speaking being to the ergon, the being of the act. Thank you, Angela. Any other question, comment?
Petro, one more thing. I would like to understand a bit more what you've said before about the divine tag.
Tongue, glossa.
No.
Yes.
Is it the term you give to La Langue?
No. La langue is something different. The divine tongue is something connected with the divine drive, and it's the language with you that I write. It's a pnoi του λόγου. The divine tongue is what was experienced. Freud didn't name that, Lacan didn't name that. They gave a different name. Is what was experienced by Saint Francis of Assisi as an exception of love for the pessimistic Freud, and what was experienced as a feminine jouissance by Lacan. By feminine jouissance, he meant a jouissance that is beyond the signifier and thus beyond the body. So the divine tongue is something that connects the verb, not the subject, the verb with the word.
Is it when we speak about what we love?
No, when we are performers of what we love.
Then what's the difference between divine drive and divine tag?
You are the divine drive.
And the tag?
The divine tongue is the way you connect with the word.
I think the divine tongue is Pedro. Sorry, but I think the divine tongue, as Pedro has sketched it today. Correct me if I'm wrong, Pedro. Yeah. But it's the inspiration, the desire that the subject has to interpret and connect it with the language, the common local language of the community, in order to create something recognizable and relatable in the world. So when Pedro was talking about the God that cannot act, that God has to act through each of us, because we have to translate. We are the conduit between the divine and the incarnate.
Yes.
And precisely our formation ongoing is to more and more be able to incarnate with the body that we authorize our body to transform, to be able to be in that place, to express and to act according to our desire, and to give shape to our world through that.
And shape to our bodies.
To our bodies, through our body, because our body inscribes all the values and beliefs. So the analytic process, in a way, the psychoanalytic process meets the divine process halfway. The psychoanalytic process is the mortal reaching to refine, reconsider, to edit the inscribed values and assumptions in the body of knowledge, both within its own person and in its community, and even more broadly. So you have to make some preparation with your assumptions and beliefs, otherwise you cannot reach further than your own beliefs allow you. And we suffer because our beliefs oppose our desire. They oppose our inspirations. They oppose what gives us joy, right? And we accept the terms of the other's articulation. So when I say to the other, so the subject goes to the analyst probably initially asking for a name. It's like, name my being, tell me how to think of myself, because I don't know what's happening, right? And really in the end, not only by the end of analysis does the subject have to simply say, like the burning bush, I am that I am. In other words, I cannot name and make myself a small object, because I'm precisely the capacity for naming anyway, the smaller objects. In other words, it's the refusal. So the identification goes to something completely of another order than the object that was my mother's daughter or my father's daughter or whatever it is. And it's interesting when Pedro was talking about the name, although this is a symptomatic case, it made me think of my grandfather's brother, who his name, he was named, and he still is. And you can imagine simply, when I tell you what what his name was, you know immediately the kind of symptom he was called. It would be known even now in the village, or Nicoliso Fasarias. He's dead now, but I'm sure he's dead now. He must be. But that was, people named him because, and it was brought to my attention when his his father, yes, my father's cousin, we were talking about, you know, the family and the village and such, and my uncle, effectively, he said to me, my father, you know, he was a gentleman, this man, he's still alive, his son. He said, my father, he went after my mother with an axe. And this father who went after his mother with an axe was Nicolis of Asarias, right? Okay, that's a name, in a way the name is always given by others who observe. But you're in the, he was acting out, but essentially you are a verb, you're doing something, and the others will make a legend of you. You don't say, I am of Asarias, because if you can say, I am of Asarias, you're already moving away from that in some way, right? So it's somehow really, you know, refined transformations in relation to language and how one is inscribed, and moving from being defined within the terms of the other to a synchronic being defined by the real. And then it's for others to read that.
The father who names can exist in from the movement from schizophrenia to paranoia when you treat schizophrenia. But so this is where we can see the father who names more powerfully. Okay, if it's in some sort of a neurosis, if the father who names it's the subject naming itself, but it is within the fantasy, because the naming is something to be read. It's something to be read. It is not on the side of writing, but it's something, even if you write it, it's on the side of the verb does not have a name. The verb does not have a name, and because it doesn't have a name, it's one of the reasons that it doesn't have a body. So there are other ways to discover and function with our bodies, but I will speak in a different seminar about it. Okay, thank you, Penny, for your comment. Is there anybody else? Anybody who wants to make a comment or question before we close it?
Hello, Petro. I'd like to ask you a question.
Yes.
If in the act, the analyst is a particle of the olon, that means the olon, we're talking about, it's a reference to God, to universe, blah, blah, blah. But can it create a new life? Not life, it's a metaphorical.
Well, okay, you use the religious terms here. The analysis is operating in his own monad or her own monad, and there is a dedication in his or her own act. That's why he's at least one who desires. And yes, if there is an analysand who is with a counter with this at least one who desire, the fantasy or what I described earlier is desire, then we have a creation ex nihilo of a new body, of a new way of approaching the world, because this person, the analysand, woman or man, have a counter that exception. The exception is, this is a proper Uber father for me, the at least one who desires. And this is what I expect from Mosana, the at least one who desires. Not desire the absolute difference, but desire by becoming an act, not only in the sessions, but in their own lives. Okay, and that it's enough to create space and possibilities for somebody else to create a new life. It's a nice sentence that you put there. That's my response to you.
Thank you, Pedro.
Okay, I think we should go. Enjoy your afternoons, after evening, and I will see you soon with a different sort of seminar.